Manx Radio's update with Lewis Foster.
Fastamai, good evening. It's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, the 29th of January, and for once today the sun has been shining, so let's celebrate with the latest news on and from the Isle of Man. Doctors on the island have accepted a new pay offer, bringing an end to a lengthy dispute over pay. We'll bring you the latest and all the reactions so far. There's concern from the farming sector over planned minimum wage increases, and are your rates set to increase? Stick around and find out. All that and more, plus business, weather and sport, and what to watch out for on the roads. Let us know your thoughts, 166 177, or email studio@manxradio.com. First of all, let's have the headlines with Christian Jones.
Fastamai. Manx Care says it's vitally important to reset the relationship with the British Medical Association and move forward with other critically important pieces of work. It's in response to doctors overwhelmingly voting to accept a new pay offer, ending a long-running dispute. The Manx National Farmers Union is warning planned increases to the minimum wage on the island will have serious implications for many people in the Manx farming community.
Of course, people should be getting a fair wage, but at the same time, it's going to be very difficult for small business to sustain that, and so we might end up in a vicious circle.
Tynwald will be asked to approve plans to raise the minimum wage in 2 stages to £13.05 next month. Tesco is recalling certain batches of one of its healthcare products as a precautionary measure due to foreign material detected in some bottles. The supermarket's own brand of dry cough relief has been affected, along with several brands of Bell's Healthcare. Michael Dunlop is set to make an appearance at this year's FIM Endurance World Championship. The 29 TT winner is expected to take part in the opening rounds at Le Mans for the team LRP Poland. In the latest international news now, and plans for a third runway at Heathrow Airport have been given the UK Chancellor's backing as part of a new drive to stimulate economic growth. But Paul Beckford from the No Third Runway Coalition Group is concerned about the environmental impact.
Deterioration in air quality, that's before you even get into the level of emissions that we produced, around 9 megatons additional from a third runway every year.
Lidl has been given approval by a high court to open its first ever pub in Northern Ireland. It'll be able to build a bar inside its store near Belfast. And Arsenal still needs a point away to Girona this evening to guarantee a place in the last 16 of the Champions League. The Londoners are third in the standings, heading into the final round of fixtures in the first phase of the new look competition. Boss Mikel Arteta says they won't be holding out for a draw though.
Well, we're here to win, and from the first minute we have that attitude and that determination to go for the game and hopefully deliver what we want.
Those are the Update News headlines next at 6.
Goromayed. Thank you, Christian Jones there. Now the latest weather brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Dry and mostly clear this evening and tonight, with the fresh to strong northwest winds decreasing a little later in the night. Minimum temperatures around 3 degrees with a slight grass frost in sheltered spots. Tomorrow will then be a fine and dry day with sunny spells, and winds will soon ease to become light. Maximum temperature tomorrow 8 degrees. Then strong south or southwest winds developing tomorrow night with rain for a time, but then dry on Friday with sunny intervals as winds gradually ease to become lighter. Sunrise tomorrow morning at 9 minutes past 8 and sunset tomorrow afternoon at 4:54.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
TE Carbon provide new memorial stones, grave renovations, new inscriptions and fire hearths. Visit us at Hope Street, Castletown or at Broadway, Douglas, or call 844 440. TE Carbon, here when you need us.
Most builders start with a hammer and saw. Manx Construction start with ideas and imagination. For new build, extension or home office, Manx Construction offer full service from planning to completion. Call Tony on 452 688.
We all need peace of mind. That's where Peace of Mind Manx Will Writing Services can help you. From just £149 plus VAT. Call 671 001 or go to peaceofmind.co.im.
At Bond Fabrics, we're not just a fabric shop. As well as curtains and upholstery and dress and costume fabrics, we've knitting and crocheting wools, made-to-measure curtain and blind service, plus poles and tracks. Visit Strand Street, Douglas, call 611856 or see bondfabrics.im.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
That's right, and the time now 5 minutes past 5. Doctors on the Isle of Man have voted overwhelmingly to accept a new pay offer, bringing an end to a long-running dispute over pay. The deal includes an 8% increase for senior doctors, backdated to April last year, and a further 8% for the coming financial year. To tell us more, Christian Jones is back. Christian, this has been a lengthy dispute. What does this agreement actually mean for doctors?
Well, the agreement is significant because it's not only delivering immediate pay rises for doctors employed by Manx Care, but it also addresses a key concern: pay disparity with NHS England. Resident doctors here will now have their base salaries aligned with those of their counterparts across the water, something that the profession has long argued was unfair and was a key factor in recruitment and retention issues.
Now, this dispute saw the threat of industrial action. We came close to doctors walking out, didn't we?
Yeah, very close. Strike action was under serious consideration, and it was only suspended at the last minute due to allow negotiations to continue because that 8% offer was issued. The British Medical Association and the Isle of Man Medical Society have been pushing for pay restoration for some time, arguing that years of below-inflation pay rises had eroded doctors' salaries. They say this deal is the first major step in reversing that, though.
So what's been the reaction to this deal?
Well, it's largely positive. The Isle of Man Medical Society, the chair, Dr. Prakash Tyagarajan, he's welcomed the results, saying industrial action was always a last resort, and thanked those involved in the negotiations, including the Chief Minister and Health Minister. The British Medical Association also sees this as a win. Their chair, the Professor Philip Banfield, he's calling it proof that when doctors stand together, they can achieve meaningful change. Manx Care has also issued a statement this afternoon saying they're pleased that the offer has been accepted, bringing an end to what they call protracted pay negotiations. It's also stressed that now is the time to reset their relationship with the BMA and focus on securing the long-term sustainability of health and care services for the island.
The golden question: does this bring the matter to a close now?
Well, for now, yes, but the broader issue of pay restoration isn't fully resolved. While this agreement effectively sets out increases for this year and next, doctors' unions have already made it clear that they will be pushing for further improvements. The deal, as they put it, is a step in the right direction, but not necessarily the final destination.
Once again, Christian Jones, Guramayad, thank you. The time now approaching 8 minutes past 5. The Treasury Minister says the proposal of a so-called Manx pension guarantee is about creating certainty for the future and doesn't mean he's getting rid of the triple lock. The measure, if approved by Tynwald, would mean the state pension would rise annually from April 2025 by either the preceding September's figure for Manx CPI inflation or 2%, whichever is higher. Alex Allinson says if government does nothing, the National Insurance Fund will run out by 2047. He adds it means taking control of the way pensions are increased for those who retired from 2019, and it enables government to track inflation and reflect it in terms of the pension. Here he is speaking to Sean Cowper.
What we're doing is creating some certainty. One of the issues I have as Treasury Minister for the Isle of Man is the triple lock is completely out of my hands. It's determined by the UK government and it's determined by the cost of living there. For instance, we are pledging to increase most of our benefits by Isle of Man inflation, which is 2.2% in September. In the UK, they're increasing it by 1.7%, which is their inflation. Well, we know that we've seen greater increases in costs on the Isle of Man, so we're reflecting that in what we pay for our pensioners here and the people who depend on benefits. So rather than creating uncertainty, I think people will know in every October exactly what they're going to get from the Isle of Man government if they paid into the state pension scheme. Whereas if they're depending on the triple lock or on the UK government, there's that slight uncertainty there is exactly what they'll get. So I think, from my point of view, this is taking control of the pension scheme. And again, this isn't about cutting benefits. This isn't about giving less. It's about giving stability for the National Insurance Fund so that people working now don't have to pay more and more into it for the pension that they expect and deserve in the future.
Before this does go to Tynwald, are you open to public feedback on this?
Absolutely, and I've been getting a lot of feedback from people and trying to explain who it affects and what the benefits they will see. Because again, this is taking control of the way we increase pensions for those pensioners who've retired from 2019. It also means that we can keep track of the inflation on the island and reflect that in terms of the pensions they get in the future. But again, for all those people in their late 40s and early 50s, this is guaranteeing that when they get to retirement age, and we've committed not to increase the retirement age any more than it is planned for at the moment, they will get a decent pension. They will get a pension that actually corresponds to the cost of living on the Isle of Man rather than something that might be in England.
Treasury Minister Alex Allinson there, speaking to Sean about the Manx pension guarantee proposals. If you want more information about what's involved in that, you can find a longer interview as a newscast under the podcast section of manxradio.com. Meanwhile, there's a warning that planned increases to the minimum wage on the island will have serious implications for the local farming community. It's come from the General Secretary of the Manx National Farmers Union, Sarah Comish. Proposals to raise the minimum wage in 2 stages, up to £13.05, will go before Tynwald next month. It would see the rate aligned with the current calculated living wage by October. Mrs. Comish told Simon Richardson she accepts the sentiment behind the increase, but warns of the possible effect on farmers and other small businesses.
It's going to put a real, maybe too much of a burden on some small business. That's not exclusive to farms. I think that's going to be a challenge for a lot of small businesses. It's a difficult one to straddle because, of course, people should be getting a fair wage. Doesn't feel unreasonable, but at the same time, it's going to be very difficult for small business to sustain that. And so we might end up in a vicious circle situation where less employment is taken on, businesses shrink, and then we don't end up, our employees and our employers don't actually end up in a better situation. So certainly that's an area that we need to have a look at from the agricultural perspective.
Yeah, it is. It's something of a vicious circle, isn't it? I mean, everyone accepts the fact, as you say, people require a decent living wage, but it does have an impact right the way round in a circle, right the way, in fact, to how much money people have in their pockets ultimately to spend on food in restaurants, and that's where it might have a knock-on effect for you.
Yeah, absolutely. In our ideal circular economy, that money would be quite literally moving around the island and generating a stronger economy. I never heard anyone say you could tax your way out of an economic crisis, but it's again, we'd like to look at that one in a little bit more detail to understand the impacts, but we have already had feedback of quite significant concern from a lot of different farm businesses as well, and that's veg, meat, dairy particularly. They do require the labour, and there is a lot of concern there, so it's something we're going to have to address this year.
That's Sarah Comish, General Secretary of the Manx National Farmers Union, speaking to Simon there.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The time now 13 minutes past 5. The leader of Douglas Council says people shouldn't join local authorities expecting to change the world quickly. Claire Wells believes it takes time to see progress, but the decisions made by the council affect the community directly. Local authority elections are taking place across the island on Thursday, the 24th of April. Our local democracy reporter, Emma Draper, has been speaking to Councillor Wells about her experience in local politics so far.
I think, fortunately for me, I think there was zero expectation, and I kind of just went in to see what I could do and what I could achieve. As time goes on, I think you learn so much. I think a lot of people come in and they think they can change the world tomorrow, and I think that is just incredibly unrealistic because things take time and it's really, really slow. But we do make progress, and I think you have to be here for a good while to see the fruits of your labours. And I think a couple of the things I'm just really, really proud of is the Williston apartments that are coming online now. When I first started in the council nearly 9 years ago now, or knocking on the door of 10 even, that was in its infancy, but this year we're going to see that come to fruition, and that's a really, really proud moment. We work a lot with, for me in particular, because I was chair for housing and I get involved with housing, the changes that we've seen in there have taken years, but they are so wonderful to see because it's such a great department. The service that they provide is amazing. So I think if you're coming in and you think, well, I'm going to change everything overnight, it just doesn't happen. So having that expectation that you can make a difference, you need to persevere and you need to have the patience in order to get that to happen.
If someone is thinking of standing, what advice would you give them?
I would totally recommend speaking to a current council member so that you can understand what it involves. It does take up a lot of time. You get people from the public that speak to you and understanding what you can and can't do, where your responsibilities lie. And I think you've always got to remember that as soon as you're a council member, you are a representative of Douglas and you're no longer somebody who can go on Facebook or Twitter or any of these things and just say whatever you like. You've always got that presentation that you are part of the council. I highly recommend it if you are passionate about where you live, you want to make a change, even though I've said earlier on that change takes time. If you're passionate about that and you want to see change or you want to help improve the environment within which you live, this is the grassroots of that. It's great being an MHK and that's like a different level. But for me, being a council member touches the vast majority of people in your constituency. You have an impact on them every single week, every single day. Something you do or something that the council does touches their lives. And I think that's incredibly important for us to make sure that the public are represented in the way that we want to. And if you're one of those people that is passionate about that, then this is the place to be.
That was leader of Douglas Council, Claire Wells.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, let's head over to the roads now. Nothing new from police, so a reminder of what to watch out for tonight. In Douglas, until at the end of the month, the bottom end of Summerhill is closed between the Prom and Strathallan Road for electrical work. In Port St Mary, the Castletown Road is closed between Gansey and the Four Roads roundabout 24 hours a day for resurfacing. In Peel, temporary lights, four-way lights at the crossroads with the Main Road and Albany Road 24 hours a day for bus stop improvements. And in Ramsey, until the end of the month, the Ramsey Swing Bridge, of course, is closed to traffic for repairs to the bridge deck. Pedestrians can still use the bridge, though. Let's look at off-island travel now. No problems to report from the airport. Clear blue skies today, so can see why. This evening's flight set to arrive and depart as scheduled. Likewise, over on the sailings, Manxman is... I can't see, it's too dark out there, but due to arrive back into Douglas any moment now. And she'll be setting sail again for Heysham at 7:15 this evening. A reminder, due to damage caused by Storm Éowyn at the sea terminal, passengers are advised to arrive early for check-in.
Quayside Tyres and Service Centre with 1 year's free engine warranty from Castrol. Get more with You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
The time now approaching 18 minutes past 5, and we've heard Castletown and Onchan are increasing their rates, and now we know that several other local authorities have increased theirs as well. Local Democracy reporter Emma Draper has more details.
Starting in Garth, the commissioners have agreed to increase their rates by 7% over the next year. No specific figure has been published, but reasons given include the need to replace old streetlights, a provision for additional costs at the two civic community sites, and a budget for the local authority elections in April, which are likely to cost about £21,000. Peel commissioners also agreed to put their rates up to 272 pence in the pound, which is an increase of 2 pence from last year. The refuse rate will also be increased by £6 to £263 per household. Last year, the general rate was set at 270 pence in the pound and the refuse rate was £257. The increase to the general rate is about 1.5%. Elsewhere, Portaran Commissioners has announced it will be increasing its rate by 1.85%. It will be set at 385 pence in the pound, which is an increase of 16 pence per week for a typical three-bed house in the village. The Commissioners say the budget provides further investment for work, including various street lighting schemes, improvement within Athol Glen, and addressing the landslips on the Radna Foyland to reopen the footpaths. The local authority has also agreed to release £33,765 from its reserves to pay for some of the planned expenditure. Last year, the rates were set at 378 pence in the pound. Castletown Commissioners have also increased their rates to 398 pence in the pound, which is an increase of 10 pence on last year's figure. The refuse charge for residents in Castletown will also be going up by £10 to £230. And Onchan Commissioners has increased their rates to 431 pence in the pound, which is a 4% rise.
Local Democracy reporter Emma Draper speaking there. Now, the Education Minister has rebutted claims that some schools' budgets have been cut. Daphne Kane says a very small amount of money has been reallocated with the cooperation of those affected. She was criticised by her fellow MHKs in the House of Keys this week for not understanding the finances of schools and so-called doublespeak. Mrs. Kane told Manx Radio it was a necessary move in order to balance the books.
It's, as we said, a very small percentage of the school budget has been reallocated to other areas in order to make sure that the department came in on budget.
It's been taken away from somewhere.
We asked the schools, as we did across the entire department, all areas, to find what savings they could have available in order that we have a £1 million.
So it's with their approval?
It's with their, with my grateful thanks to all the schools who contributed the small amounts they could in order that across 28 of our 32 primary schools, £100,000 was put into the centre to enable the budget to be balanced this year. And also, in doing that, schools who could not afford to contribute did not. And in fact, as I said, the money was reallocated, and we have particularly some challenges from some schools requiring additional funding, particularly in areas of additional needs.
But in any cases, did you say to the schools, yes, you must cut, and they said, we'd rather not? You said, but you must.
We asked the schools from the centre, the officers went out and requested that any schools who had some unspent available funding that could contribute to enable the department to meet its budget and balance the budget this year, if they would contribute it. The schools who were able to contribute did. There won't be an impact in terms of the educational services delivered on the island. We're just making sure that the money goes where it's most needed and for the education across our island.
Education Minister Daphne Kane speaking to John Moss there. Now, a UK Marine Accident Investigation Branch report into the death of the chief engineer aboard the Isle of Man registered luxury motor yacht Baton Rouge has confirmed he died from electrocution. Father of two, 47-year-old Roy Tem from Southampton had entered the vessel's engine room during a power outage to carry out repairs. The accident occurred on the 23rd of February last year when the vessel was alongside Falmouth Harbour in Antigua. Simon Richardson reports.
Mr. Tem was attempting to replace a damper actuator situated in the ventilation duct compartment. The investigation found he'd commenced the work without isolating the electric supply and without a permit to work for electrical maintenance in place. This was likely because he'd rationalised the risk and wanted to avoid the limitations of restricting the vessel to emergency power. Despite efforts to resuscitate him, the chief engineer's heart could not be restarted, and he was pronounced dead in hospital later that morning. The pathologist's post-mortem report noted that Mr. Tem, who was found slumped over the ventilation trunking, had a full-thickness burn to his right hand and a second partial-thickness burn on his left upper arm in the region of the elbow. Cause of death was recorded as hypoxia with petechial hemorrhage and a full and partial-thickness burn. His injuries were consistent with electrocution, and the burns indicated the entry and exit points of the current as it flowed through his body to earth. The Marine Accident Investigation Branch report has highlighted a number of safety issues in the wake of the tragedy, but in view of the actions already taken by the yacht's operating company, Nigel Burgess Limited, no recommendations have been made. The MAIB report was compiled on behalf of the Isle of Man Ship Registry.
23 minutes past 5. Upcoming Manx road racer Marcus Simpson recently took the next step in his career by signing a 2-year deal with WH Racing for 2025 and 2026. And going into this latest season, the Ireland competitor says he's relishing the new challenge and feeling stronger and better after a tough 2024.
The big thing on this is the 2-year deal. It came as a complete surprise to me. It's just fantastic to know that, after a challenging year last year, lots learned, that I can come into this year and just go about my thing and learn my way through and almost treat it as a first TT again with a new team, a complete new environment for me. I've been very much my own boss, if you like, for the last 4 or 5 years, and now to be, in a team and representing other people, in that respect, it's going to be a new challenge, and working with new people is going to be great.
You were quite open in the fact that it was quite a tough year in 2024, a few setbacks and a few things that you had to deal with. Does it feel like you're almost kind of turning over a new leaf going into 2025?
100%. To be honest, I turned a new leaf in sort of July, August last year, and that's what led to things, moving in the right direction from then. It's just been a great 6 months, and I'm really looking forward to the next 6 months building into the TT. I've got some exciting plans. I'm heading to Spain in a month, and we'll get started with the new team there, and I'm just really looking forward to this year. I've got a real good feeling about it. I'm very much a road racer. I'm not so interested in short circuits. The plan for this year is Northwest TT, Tandragee Armoy, and the Southern 100 and Macau, pending an invite back there. And obviously now there's been some discussion about things happening in the Southern Island, so I'm going to have a look at that because I had such a great time there in 2022 and I don't really want to miss it. So yeah, we'll definitely be looking at that.
What are the biggest lessons you learnt last year that you maybe want to take into this year to kick on?
I think one of the big things I learned last year was sort of mastering my own mind. I was probably my biggest enemy at times, and I've had some great advice off some great people over the last 6 months, and that is probably the biggest thing that I'm going to have going into this year, is a much stronger mindset.
That was Manx road racer Marcus Simpson speaking to Manx Radio's sports editor Rob Pritchard, who joins us now with the latest look at sporting news from the Isle of Man. Faster my Rob.
Faster my Lewis. Well, starting things off tonight, two of the Isle of Man's pro cyclists have been back in racing action in Australia in the last 24 hours. Lizzie Holden and Becky Storey have been contesting the inaugural Surf Coast Classic one-day race. UAE Team ADQ rider Holden managed a top 25 finish, crossing the line in 24th place, whilst Team Picnic Post NL competitor Storey came home in 58th place, around 18 seconds behind the leading group. Well, both Ireland riders began their Women's World Tour campaign at the Tour Down Under just over a week ago, with Holden and UAE Team ADQ going on to win the team classification there. Meanwhile, there's been double medal success for Isle of Man badminton competitor Kimberly Clegg during this year's Scottish International Masters Championships. Contesting two events, Clegg claimed gold alongside Nikita Kolomnin in the mixed doubles tournament and won silver alongside England's Kelly Ferry in the women's doubles. And separately, Clegg was also part of the England team, which went on to beat Scotland 33-10 in the annual Robert McCoig match. Well, Clegg and Ferry were only bested in the final of the women's doubles by Scottish pairing Jodie Burrell and Frances McClure by a scoreline of 21-13, 22-20. And in the final of the mixed doubles, they were pushed the full three-set distance by Scotland's Mark Mackay and Shona Mackay, with Clegg and Kolomnin eventually coming out on top 21-10, 16-21 and 21-10 to secure the gold. And elsewhere in motorsport, Michael Dunlop is set to make an appearance in this year's FIM Endurance World Championship. The 29-time TT winner has been announced as one of the riders for Team LRP Poland, which will contest the Superbike class of the event in 2025. It's expected Dunlop will take part in the opening round of the championship, the 24-hour moto, on the Circuit Bugatti at Le Mans in France on Saturday the 19th of April and Sunday the 20th of April. Separately, Michael is yet to publicly announce his plans for this year's TT and Northwest 200.
Gormiad, Rob Pritchard, thank you. That's it for Update Tonight. Thank you for joining me. You can listen back to tonight's programme as a podcast on Manx Radio shortly. Howard Kane is here next with Spotlight before Greatest Hits with Chris Kinley at 6 o'clock. In the meantime, have a good evening.